everyone, and welcome to the Dyslexia Life Hacks Show. I'm your host, Matthew Head, and in this episode, I'm talking to John Rinaldo. He's the author of Surviving COVID-19. Being alone was the best COVID-19 medicine, and he's also got a new book out called The Bike Accident, Working Through the Low Valleys of Blessings. John didn't think he'd be a writer because this thing would call dyslexia be in the way, and how now he's become an author, he donates some of his proceeds to children with dyslexia. As always, I'll put links to his books in the show notes, which will be available at dyslexialifehacks.com/podcast. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thank
Excellent. You. Well, I thought I'd kick the conversation off with today is your latest book, The Bike Accident. Are you still a keen cyclist, or was that push you off bikes forever after that?
I'm still... It took me over a year to jump back on. It was a very serious accident at the time.
Yeah.
And it kind of set me back in so many different ways. So I do jump on and I don't strap on like I did in the past.
Did you have the clipping pedals before, did you?
No, I had the actual strap, the wrap, like the old bike. I have a really old bike that has the straps. You just strap in. And so I took those off because that was the last time I couldn't get my foot out to stop my fall.
Oh, no.
So I was like, I'm not good. I'm going to take that off for now until I feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah, fair enough. And then obviously, but it did give you inspiration for a second book. And we'll come back to book writing a bit later. What does you do for a day job if you're not out on the bike or writing books?
I'm in sales. I work for a technology company, and we do a little bit of converting buildings into smart buildings. So,
So like renewable energy and making them more energy efficient. Is that kind of what your company's doing?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yep.
And has that always been your kind of vocation in life, doing sales, or have you kind of zigzagged through your career?
No, sales has been primary, either managerial role or customer service, whatever. Yeah.
Okay. And is that something you had to study at? Let's see, I'm going to say university, but I think you refer to it as college. Is that something you had to study in college?
No, I went to university.
Yeah.
I went to university. I got a bachelor's degree in history and poli-sci later in life. I went to college later in life as a non-traditional student. And but before that, I was a pipe fitter. I was in construction pipe fitting. Then I got really in a bad accident there as well. So then it kind of propelled me into then I was forced to go back to college. So I went back to college or university. And then that's how I really learned about my dyslexia over a period of time. Because when I was younger, I knew I had a learning disability, but we really didn't understand my disability. And then when I went to college or university, that's where things started to develop and understood.
Okay, so this sort of serious accident is a catalyst for you going back to restudying at university. How did you find out you were dyslexic at that point in your life then? What sort of age were you at that point?
I was about, I'd say 24-ish. And so I really had a really bad accident, a work compensation accident that put me out for a while. And then they, the doctors were kind of like, you don't really want to go back. You really need to start thinking about a different career. And at the time, the government was giving grants or tuitions, whatever, for non-traditional students to come back and get an education and help yourself better. So I took advantage of those opportunities, and that's how I started to go down that path. And then when I got into university, I was taking a lot of education because when I graduated from high school, I would say my reading, my writing was around grade 8, so 12 or 13-ish. And I knew I needed to really pick that up because, in construction, you don't really use that, use reading. And I wasn't a really proficient reader or writer at the time.
Yeah.
So then I went back, and every class I would take with this professor, and she one day picked up on stuff, and she said, "Come over here. I want to do a little one-on-one with you." And then she started asking questions, and then she said, "I think you might have something. We just need to." And she asked my early beginnings in school, and she said, what was going on? And I said, "Well, I was a special ed student. I went to special classes, and did you really know what you had?" And I said, "No, I was told I had a learning disability." And so from there, she said, "Okay, let's go." And she did further tests, and then they realized I had dyslexia. So that's how I learned about my true diagnosis.
Yeah.
And that kind of opened up a lot of doors for me. It made sense then.
Yes, I can imagine. So do you think your unstatemented dyslexia really led you into the manual handling construction industry in the first place, because you're struggling with school, you're not getting through, and then that kind of leads you down that career path?
Yeah, so grade 6, I remember a special ed teacher told me I would never amount to more than a dishwasher. So with that mindset,
how encouraging!
It was very encouraging.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And it really upsetted me. It peed me off, So with that said, the next following year, I wanted out of the class. I wanted to be normal, and I was able to work myself out. I went to the principal's office. I said, "Hey, I'm done with this. I want to be a normal student. I want to go to normal classes." And Mr. Warner was the teacher that I was going to go to class with, and he said, "I'll take him on. I'll mentor him. I'll work with him." And we had some arrangements. I had to do X, Y, and Z. I had to meet some conditions, and I said, "Not a problem." And so, but it gave me an opportunity to be in a classroom out of the class that I hated so much into a normal class. The opportunity to see outside the window, because where I was is all cubicles, and you were stuck in this little. Not that like you were in a dungeon, but it felt like that as a student, especially with only 5 students, and that's all you had.
Yeah.
And then coming out of there was like, oh my God, I get to see outside the windows. I can daydream a little bit. I was being a kid again. And then from that mindset, I didn't think I was going to amount to anything because of my learning disability, and because people were kind of like telling me I was no good, more or less.
Yeah.
And so that led me into construction, and that's where I became a manual labor. Without that accident, life wouldn't change. So.
Yes, yeah. It's a shame almost that you've had to have a serious accident to really find out why you were kind of where you were in terms of education, isn't it? But then you're kind of catalyst.
Yeah. I always wanted to go to college because I thought I was capable. But I didn't think I had how you call it? I didn't think I was smart enough to do the academic. And it's because, when you're labeled, you have a disability, there's so many negatives towards that. Because how would college help with someone with disability? What's that mean to them? And then your friends are going to college or whatever. And it's just, you didn't think it was your world. You just thought it was, you were always going to be a laborer or some sort. Nothing wrong with it, because my dad was a laborer. My brother is an electrician. They all done very well for themselves in life. And there's nothing wrong. Sometimes in life, there's always redirections. And they're meant to be a redirection because the path that you were leading wasn't healthy for you for one reason or another. And, so had relationships ending, jobs ending, whatever. That happened to be a choice that, was forced upon me, which I'm grateful today it did, because it led me into the university and able to get degrees and getting to understand my dyslexia. Now, don't get me wrong, it was hard for me to go back to college, because I was, if I was studying for a test, I was studying 3 weeks in advance for a test.
Oh, yeah. Well, your classmates are 2 days in advance. Yeah.
So, I was studying way before that, because I was told, hey, if you really want to overcome this is what you have to do. So I put the work in.
Of course,
But then, don't get me wrong, I hated it, but I did it. And, they taught me how to study. They taught me how to, figure things out. And, it was, I was getting B's and A's in college. Nothing scholar type, but I was doing very well for myself.
Pretty good. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So how far were you into your college days before you actually got statemented? You touched on how you found out, but were you in sort of your early years, or was it getting near the end that you realized you were dyslexic?
Oh, no. It was very, very early. And very early. It was like, so knowing that I had my grade 8 type of reading and writing type level of education, I started taking a lot of English courses to help me to improve my reading, improve my writing, and stuff like that, because I knew I needed it to improve my college writing and reading. And during that, it was really early, so I was like taking like 3 or 4 classes at night, just trying to get those under my belt. And the professor, she was really good. I really appreciated her, and she really caught me early and said, "Hey, let's start focusing on why you have a learning disability, and not just because you have a learning disability, because that is a broad statement."
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then obviously you find out this learning disability is a thing called dyslexia. Now, what sort of interventions were put in place then to help you as a dyslexic person at college?
Well, so I had somebody they just did some tests, and they said, "This is what you have." And then they taught me how to read, and then, reading differently, making sure I slowed down, and I actually read it very loud and, repeatedly. Sometimes I got a lot of audio books to help me hear it. And so I would read along with the audio book. Then so that was a lot of that. And then obviously pronunciation of words and saying things, you can kind of get tripped up, but they all said, the person that was helping, you're going to trip up regardless. So you just got to work it through, and once that happens, you got to slow down, take your time, and then just read it slowly. And then, and so that was that reading out loud to people. That was it still is a bother today. I still mess up, I still mess up, but that's okay. And it's taken a long time to just accept that. And once I've done that, I kind of laugh it off now. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. And then when it came to writing, I would actually write. Professors will give you questions, and, predominantly good questions. They'll say, or sometimes they'll even give you questions in advance and say, "Hey, here's 10 questions that could be on the test." And so I would research the question, write down the note, and then I would write it down. And then every night I would write down that same, so it stuck in my head. I kept writing it and writing it and writing it. And then that way I would write the paragraph, rewrite the paragraph. I would keep doing that consistently. So when I was in the middle of test, I was able to basically regurgitate the habit of just writing that out. So when I saw that question, I knew what was going to happen. Now, multiple choice, that was still a zinger for me. That wasn't easy. Because it's meant to confuse you, and it confused me a lot. And then, but I had to work through that. That's still a challenge.
Yeah. Interesting. Did you get any assistive technology or anything like that to help you along?
No, not at the time. No, not at the time. There wasn't anything other than audiobook. Not like today. There's a lot of stuff you can get today.
There is,
right?
Yes, yeah.
That's just sort of like pre-internet boom, more or less.
So we're talking sort of 1990s somewhere?
Like 1996-ish, around 95. The internet was around. We were still talking about dial-up. We didn't have the apps on your phone which could help you articulate words.
Mm-hmm.
So no, we didn't really at that time, and not that I know of, we had any of that. So the only thing I had was the audio, which I'd listened while I was reading the book. That helped me.
Yes.
And then a lot of my thing was really talking to professors and really understand what they were looking for. So
yes, getting under the skin of yeah. I remember doing that as well. It's if I have an exam with X professor who's going to mark it, like I know sort of what they're looking for in their answers because they kind of yeah. But that's kind of good exam technique, isn't it? Understanding when a question's on the page what the person who set the question is looking for, isn't it? So
right, exactly. The other thing, was like writing essays or papers.
Yes.
So one of the things I learned, which is what I do now, is like I'll write it all out. Like I don't care if it's grammatically incorrect. I don't care the spelling. I don't care the punctuation. I just don't care. I just boom.
Yeah.
And then I would go back and then I research that paragraph, make sure it makes sense. And don't get me wrong, I can't just write an essay and just hand it in. It has to go through a couple stages of editing. And then I would have a couple good friends. I would say, hey, can you edit this for me and make sure it makes sense? And that also took a lot of, pride,
yes,
because you don't really want to share your work because you're afraid that you just got to have confidence that people are not going to do that. So,
yeah.
Because when I was younger, I got bullied because of it. And you don't want that to continue, right? So
yes, you don't. It's a shame, really, because you are totally right on that point. There's a hack on my website called Write Fast, Write Bad, Write Wrong, and it is about literally what you just said. Get it all out. Then you got something you can proofread and edit. If it's stuck in your head, it goes nowhere. But as a young dyslexic person, if you do that and then give it to one of your peers, they aren't. If your friends, but other people aren't really that understanding, which is probably a polite way of putting it. So it's trying to find a nice kind of group of people you really trust with your, hey, I know this is going to be off, the grammar's going to be off, the spelling's going to be off. However, is the content correct? And then can we polish the spelling and grammar afterwards? Because the content's the most important thing. And then we need to make it nice for communication to the person who's reading it.
Yes, exactly. That's the overall challenge. It's not, the pride is letting somebody read your work. Mm-hmm. That's probably the hardest thing, especially having dyslexia or a learning disability. You don't want to, because you're afraid you'll be judged, have an opinion against you, or told that you're doing stupid or whatever the negatives are. That's what you're worried about the most.
Yeah.
And it's very, you can retreat in yourself and get lost, and then all of a sudden you don't believe in yourself. You don't think you're going to do well.
Yeah,
and that's what the problem is most of the time. So
a lot of us have been there. I think I certainly have. Yeah. Challenging. It is challenging. So you obviously passed your college course and your university degree and landed in the world of work again. So you're now early 30s, I guess, by this point, late 20s?
No, I'm actually in my 50s.
But at the point when you finished university.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
That's right.
In my 30s, I got hired on and started working, got into sales, started to do, it's all types of sales. And then that's been my majority of my career is in sales, marketing, business development, product development, things like that.
And how did you find that? Because now you're entering career number 2. And not only do you now have a degree, you're going for probably more of a professional rather than a hands-on role. But you also know you're dyslexic now, so you know more of the tools that you would have never bothered with the previous job, how to kind of manage that. So how did you find now going out in the workforce in a professional job as a dyslexic person?
It wasn't, so you gotta understand, I took all my beatings in university, so I had, so I had to let go of a lot of stuff. I had to let go of whatever that was. And so when I went to work and I had to write emails, all that.
Yes,
when I write emails, I created form emails. So I worked on form emails. So I had a repetition.
Yes.
Because there was always, there's always, mostly emails were repetition, the same thing. As long as I had, so I created files and created emails. And so then I can pull that back out rather than regurgitating from memory. So I was able to pull that, do that, just some basic blocking and tackling. And then if I had to write something, I would ask a colleague, hey, does this make sense? Because we're all, when you're trying to address a customer, you want to sound professional. So
of course.
And we never had, it was never, I wouldn't say it was an issue. It was just accepted, I guess, in the professional world that we all try to help each other because the end goal is to win a project or win a sale or whatever that case may be. So, then later in life, it just became just a basic practice of mine was to always ask and then move forward with it. So,
yeah. I think it's a good thing. And I think you are right. You sort of allude to it there with the professional word because the whole team is trying to move something forward. So they will all help each other out, which I think does help a lot when, as you say, can you proofread this email for me? And you're not the first person who said on this podcast about writing pro formas for their emails that they just fill in the blanks whenever they need to send it. Having standardized documents is great.
I mean, I have probably 20 different emails, over 20 different emails, one way or another, introduction, explaining a product, explaining why I'm reaching out. I mean, I pull it from all directions. So
yeah, that's cool. And it's a nice little trick there. And I guess as technology is improved, you're now utilizing that more and more to help you out.
Right, exactly.
With like Microsoft Word being able to read aloud and all that kind of fun stuff, it does now really, really helps. So what I thought we go to now is writing books. I know that's the reason you got hold of me for coming on this podcast.
Yeah.
Now, I've listened to Surviving COVID-19 in the car yesterday, and it's quite a good book. And I was going to ask you how did the idea come about, but I got a feeling I know how the idea came about because it's very, very focused. But what inspired you to write a book?
So I've always wanted to write a book, and I've been writing all my life. And I do journals and things like that just to continue to help with the progressive work of it, of me. I'm just trying to improve every single day.
Yes, of course.
So, and I had 4 or 5 different types of books draft already, either in progress or whatever. And then COVID hit, and I was living alone. I had no family, and I was just thinking about what would be their thing. So I asked a lot of questions because because you're talking to friends on the phone because you're limited to do what you can do. And they explained the story. So it was more of a perspective of living alone, how to live alone with yourself.
Yes.
And just trying to figure out how would that work. So when I wrote that, it was just a simple, it was me basically journaling events that I heard or things or situations happening or my self experiences. And I just jotted it all down, and then I transcribed it into a Word document, and then I started working on it. And that was one of the reasons why I wrote that one, was just to kind of teach people being alone is not a bad thing. It's actually the best thing for you.
Yeah, interesting. And you just did you write the journals more as a self-help thing for yourself, and then you realized you had a book there, or was it always intended to be a book when you started journaling?
No, I always thought it was. I did it for myself, and then when I read through my notes, I started realizing, because people were talking about because you're on social media, everybody's like, because I used to get off social media. I was like, I'm done with social media because everybody's like partying on social media. And here we are in a pandemic. Everybody's like making, not, there's political back and forth, all that stuff. And I was like, why isn't anybody taking advantage of this opportunity? Because this is a perfect opportunity of self-discovery, of self-awareness, of bringing things back to you. Because you had potentially a year to yourself to do whatever you want to do and still get paid for it. If you think about it that way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, most of us, a lot of us had that opportunity. So why not take that opportunity? Start a business, start doing something, do something that will propel you in a different world. And that's why I thought, well, living alone wasn't a bad thing for me. And then when I wrote it, people who read the book realized, yeah, I had the best time too. I wish we could go back to the pandemic. They were talking about going back to the pandemic. And I was like, living alone was the best thing for me. So that's why I wrote the book at the end of the day.
Oh, that is really cool. How did you find writing a book as a dyslexic person? Because for me, it's like I feel I could write a book to go, yes, I've written a book and I've defeated you books, but I don't necessarily would find it really daunting just writing stuff down all the time. It's not necessarily my strongest thing to do. And it sounds like writing's not one of your strongest either.
I actually have improved over time in writing. No, I wouldn't say I'm a proficient writer.
Yes.
But I'm learning that more and more people like ourselves have some type of learning disability. You're going to have some scholars who's going to outwit you all the time. And that's fine. I look at it like, whatever. But I look at it as, so writing has actually, I think I'm starting to write better because of my willingness to improve. Now, don't get me wrong, I misspell, I do some grammatical things, and if you're catching that and you're learning that, that's fine. But when I wrote these books, I found an editor that would help me through this. And, I got it all out, went through it again, just back to the basics of college and professionals where, okay, I need your attention on this. Can you help me? And so I hired an editor to help me get through this, and they were willing to help me. And then they were able to put it together for me. And then I went back and I edited again, and we went back and forth maybe a few more times. I think about like 20 times back and forth.
Right. Yes,
and then we had a book, and then I was like, great, let's publish it. And that's how we started it. So it wasn't, remember, the journey was a long journey. I think it really short, but I'm netting the process a lot.
Yeah, you make it sound super simple.
It is simple because I've done it once. Now I can do it again. But the process was the initial thing was me getting things on paper and getting things into a content that I felt that needed to be said in the book, and what I wanted to cover and what I wanted to address. So I had to go through a process, and I had to go through that. Once I got that part down, I went back and cleaned it up, just like I was doing my essays and, my emails. So then from there, I went into, okay, I need to find somebody. So I found somebody that was, the friend who recommended, and we worked together on it. And then once we came out of that, like I said, it was like 20 times. It was like a span of 6 months. It wasn't something that was like a week or two. 6 months. And then once that got done, then we felt comfortable moving forward with it. And that's the end result. And then, it was just a matter of doing it, but really just taking action, kind of not giving up,
putting some forward momentum in it is a big thing.
Right.
Now, we sort of covered how it might be hard to be a dyslexic person as a writer, but obviously, as you might know, is that dyslexia also has strength. How do you feel like the strength of dyslexia, sort of picture thinking and things like that, helped you in terms of formulating a book?
So I think it's a blessing to have dyslexia.
Right.
I believe it is.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at things very abstract, or you're looking at things that may be very complicated, and you have, because of your dyslexia, you are challenged to make things simple, where people make it complex. Sometimes you can overcomplicate things, like I do, but you can simplify it very, very quickly by saying, okay, that's how it looks like, where people will diagnose it and kind of like take forever. So I think having dyslexic makes you very artistic, so mind you, growing up, I wasn't artistic. I didn't like the art. I mean, I probably went to a couple plays when I was younger. I liked a little bit of the symphony because of my dad and a couple other things. Musical, I love, all because of my mom. There's a couple things that I liked. But growing up as a child, I was a pure jock. It was either football, basketball, whatever it was. And that's what I thought hockey, I thought that was my destiny, because I didn't think education would be my form of thing. And then once I discovered I wasn't a great athlete, I obviously had to go with plan B. So, so growing up, I was not artistic at all. But later in life, when I started to really reach out to my artistic side, I picked up painting one day and I painted. Yes. And I didn't know I was a painter, and I was able to paint. And people who see my painting have said, well, this is really good painting. And I was like, okay. And so I've now started collective artwork myself, and they're roaming around the house here, but it is what it is. And I don't sell anything. I just kind of like let it go. But, painting and writing, what it does, it gives you an opportunity to express yourself in a way that you can normally do. Sometimes when you're stuck in this world of being pegged as this art, of this person that can't, you have a learning disability, you have dyslexia, you are limited. When you can get in the art and express yourself differently, it helps you expand your mind differently. So when you look at things like writing, you're not pigeonholed anymore. You can expand that, wording or that paragraph or that vision. Like you have because you have deeper insight of what that picture looks like. So, some people might call, that's blue. You might look at it and say, yeah, but it's blue, but there's a little bit of baby blue in it. There might be some white into it. There might be a little bit of this. You're describing it verbally. How do you put that into words or into a canvas and things like that, where most people can't do that. And I think people with dyslexia have way more advantage than someone that doesn't have it.
Yes, yeah. I think you're right, and I do think the bigger picture thing, it's just, as you say, having the ideas and putting information together is cool, and it's getting out on a page, and you've sort of cited how you've done that. And the artistic side is interesting, isn't it? Where realizing you're not going to get into sports and jump into art, and then how you've picked it up later in life is really interesting, isn't it? Where I remember hearing in your book where you took up painting because you were sort of in self-isolation. You're like, well, actually, I quite enjoy this.
Yeah, I was like, how does a jock like painting? Because you just like, that doesn't meet, right? But I just got into it, and I liked it, and it actually was able to express differently.
Yes, yeah. And it's almost like we're all complicated people, isn't it?
Yeah, and musicians there's a lot of people in the world of entertainment are dyslexia because of their talent, because they're able to pick up an instrument and just hear the notes and able to play the notes, or somebody can read off script and just have an oral moment and just express it without reading a power prompt, power prompt that I can't see. There you go.
Yeah. Teleprompter.
A teleprompter. So there's people can actually sit there and sit and talk and have this conversation. So I think when we put labels on people, it gives them a limitation in their head. When we should actually say, you're not limited. You can unleash something inside you. We just got to find that gift. And how do we find it? And just, we start exploring. And I think that's what, early, when I go back to my childhood, I definitely had limitations. I had labels. Obviously, there was some mental health issues going on because I was, feeling not worthy of myself. Didn't think I had any value to contribute to the world. I mean, just think about it. Think about guys like Einstein.
Mm-hmm.
He had some disability of some, he had some stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine him having limitations. We would never had his work to be explored. I mean, that whole relativity would have never been existed, or even or some screenwriters, guys who write these great movies. If they had limitations and told they couldn't do it and they were boxed in, we would never see these great movies. I mean, I just think overall, I think defining somebody having dyslexia is a bad thing. I think we're all gifted. It's just we got to find what is our gift used and what our purpose is. And once we figure that out, then everything else doesn't matter. You're just moving with the flow.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of personal growth needed to find out, as you say, moving through the flow and losing some of the negative self-beliefs and boxes that you paint yourself in that you really shouldn't be. And I think once you lose that, you're almost like cycling downhill by that point, isn't it?
Or crashing your bike.
Oh, yeah, like falling off a bike. Yes. Yes. As if you're trying to plug book number 2.
Yeah.
But that is a nice but not planned segue into that. So you've done book number 1, Surviving COVID-19, and then you fall off your bike and end up with rehab on that. And I guess it's the same kind of journey again, where you almost use it as a bit of therapy for yourself and realize there's a book out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But now you have the confidence from publishing your first book. How did things change for you in terms of writing and publishing the second one?
So definitely the first one, I learned a lot. Of what to do and not to do. And I got the process in. The second book, the reason why I wrote that book was when I had my bike accident, I was in the hospital for 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
And in being in the hospital for 5 days, what happened was the first initial thing is they do a CAT scan or MRI, whatever they choose to do or elect to do. And so they scan your body for other internal injuries, because with a serious accident like that, there's going to be some other things going on.
Yes.
So obviously bruised rib, bruised up and down the leg, broken shoulder, concussion. And in fact, that's what they were looking for, my concussion, just because I wasn't wearing a helmet at the time. It was, and so I was knocked out completely. So anyways, they were scanning the whole body, and then they discovered that I had an athletic aneurysm lodged in my heart.
Oh.
And it was 4 centimeters. And that was so when they were diagnosing me all this information, I was so heavy on drugs, because I was in a huge pain, 200 over 100 on my high blood pressure, pain level, extremely pain, because the whole shoulder was throbbing. So it was uncontrollable. And so they were giving me a lot of drugs at the time and to calm down the pain.
Mm-hmm.
But as the doctor was telling me all these things, and this is a period during COVID still too. I was the end of the tail of COVID, and all this stuff was coming at me, and I had nobody to advocate for me other than myself. Well, imagine yourself being there, listening to all this news, and then also the doctor walks away, and you're sitting in a room, you're kind of you're stoned because of all the drugs you're taking, and you're trying to digest this whole conversation, and you're thinking about aneurysm. You're like, what's an aneurysm? Like, you're now questioning all this, right? And I, the first thing I needed to do was heal, protect my shoulder, get all that things get done. And then I needed to worry about that last. Well, that whole bike accident was a blessing as well, because if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have known about my aneurysm, which led me into another journey of discovery that the aneurysm was a result of a Cohn-Smith disease or syndrome, which is part of your kidneys. And what it does, it produces more hormones in your body, which gives you an off balance. And if it's off balance in your body, it will raise your blood pressure and can cause some other internal issues. So without knowing that, I mean, that could have been going on for a few years.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have that bike accident, I don't know if I'd be talking to you today.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was it was a road of that. So the book really is about, then, the diet that I'm on, or I'm working on, the type of cooking I do, the doctors I met, the medications I took, because it was about the 10 medications that had like four surgeries, I think, at the time, in the span of a year and a half. And so there's a lot of things going on, plus, your day-to-day stuff. And this book is about, it tells you the story about my journey of that bike and the aftermath. It also gives you medical information. It gives you mental health. It talks about the practices I do, like yoga every day, that helps with mental and toughness. And also I work on, the food I eat, why we're eating the way why I eat the way I eat. And there's a lot of, the exercise I do, why I do them. So it gives the reader not just a story, but also a self-help, a discovery, but also be an advocate. Because every time I went to a cardiologist for my aneurysm, they kept giving me more pills.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's got to be a solution to this. So, and that was not accepted. So I kept moving on. So that's how. And I wrote about it, as like I wrote my journey about my COVID. I wrote my journey about my bike accident, and that's how I came up with my bike accident story.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Cool. So I just wanted to touch on, before we get to the end of this podcast, you're donating some of the proceeds of your books to dyslexia, children with dyslexia. What particularly, is that a charity in its own, or is it a selection of charities that you're donating it to?
There's a national one for United States, dyslexia, for kids with dyslexia, and I've been donating to them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's really nice. And is it, what gave you the idea to do that? Because you thought, because you struggle with dyslexia, now you've nailed it writing a book, you're like, I'm going to give some back? Yeah,
I was thinking it would help. It would help other kids along the way, because I'm looking at myself as a kid. Because if I look back as a 10-year-old boy, and if I went back to that time where that teacher told me I was going to be a dishwasher, and that was probably the worst time of my life, or one of my worst time of my life, and then I went back to that kid and go, "Hey, you graduated from university. Yes. Hey, you wrote 2 books. By the way, you have a successful career. Oh, by the way, you travel the world. Oh, by the way, you're learning how to speak different languages because you don't, and like that 10-year-old self, I'd be like, there's no way. That's not me. Like, I'd be like, really? That's us? I mean, so that's really where, so I'm looking at other kids as myself as 10-year-olds. They need the support and recognition when I know that they're just not, they don't have limitations. They have unlimited potential within.
No, that's brilliant. I think, people can learn from your own life, other people's life journeys. Hopefully, don't have to go through the same sort of dark nights of the soul, so to speak. Okay then. Well, I like to wrap the podcast up with 3 rapid fire questions. They are rapid fire from me, but don't need rapid fire answers from yourself. So let's dive into these. Question number 1. What prejudice have you had about dyslexia that has been proven wrong?
You can't amount to anything. Like, that's completely garbage.
It is indeed, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And question number 2. If an alien landed and they asked you to describe dyslexia to them, how would you do it?
I would hold the mirror in front of them.
Okay. You're going to have to expand on that one a little bit.
Well, because if I saw an alien, I'd be like, what is an alien, right? How do I don't know.
I see the thinking there. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And final question from me. Seeing as this is called the Dyslexia Life Hack Show, what is your favorite dyslexia life hack?
So, we all have limitations if we think that way. If you want to be somebody, you can do it.
Yes.
There's nothing you can do. There's nothing that's going to stop you. So it may apply you, may not apply you, but if you want to be a writer, there's ways you can be a writer. You are not limited to the confines of your life. If you want to learn how to write, you want some help to write, I can help you. Reach out to me, I'll help you. I'll give you the strategies that I have, or I'll help you along the way and get you there. But really, you need to. That really is, we're here to help others to achieve their greatness. So if you have to have enough courage to ask the question of help. Can you help me proofread this? Can you help me do this? Can you help me do that? It's not something that you are not capable of doing. It's just, you just need that extra little help to get you past that hurdle. So don't look at it as a limitation. Look at it as an opportunity to learn from it and become better as a person each day.
Yes, some very sound advice there. Okay, where can people find you, or where can people find your books? And is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
No, you can actually find me on TikTok at Johnny POV, JIANNI POV. That's my username, and I put out daily messages out there about life and things like that. What I'm working on, you can find me there.
Cool. And I'll put links to the books where they're on Amazon, and Surviving COVID-19 is also on Audible in the show notes. And I want to take the time to thank you for coming on the podcast. It's been a great conversation.
Great. And thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. And I want to thank everybody else for taking the time to listen, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Goodbye for now.